Who, if there was a pie, and of course the aim isn't to ultimately land here, but if we were to look at it just right now, who would you guys say is more at fault for the state of where marriage is today?
Like, are you saying between like a man and a woman?
Yes.
Or like, okay.
Or if there are third-party factors involved, that as well.
What's going on, you guys? This is Sunday night post-edit Devahntau, and I just want to preface this video first by saying that these two guests are some guests that I've been trying to get on for a long time, so this was something very special and exciting for me. And there were some difficulties that happened, and it affects about almost the first 5 minutes of it. There's no visuals within the first 5 minutes because there were some camera difficulties going on. But regardless, I was still super excited to get this father-son combo and to just see what their different perspective looked like on the same topic, but with their years and the generation between them. What would that play out to? What would that look like? And some of the answers that I got were surprisingly like on a, well, I'll let it play out and I won't spoil too much, but suffice to say, there's a ton of good takes that I agree with, a lot of wisdom, and actually surprisingly way more empathy and understanding for some of the questions that I posed here, because some of the questions asked here are very uncomfortable and are they kind of speak to a lot of issues that I see that a lot of men in today's world feel like need to be addressed and don't feel like are being treated as seriously as what they are nowadays. I think it makes for a really great watch. So I've gone on long enough. Enjoy the episode, and I'll see you guys at the end of the video. Bye.
All right. Welcome to the Inspired Challenge podcast, episode 4. I'm your host, Devahntau Colonel. And finally, after many a technical difficulty and troubleshooting and everything in between, we finally made it on with our special guest. So let's introduce ourselves from the right to the left.
All right. So I'm Jacob Monahan.
And I'm Kevin Monahan.
And I am, of course, your host, Devahntau Colonel. So, gentlemen, let's waste no time. All right, so real quick, let's do a quick breakdown to the audience of you guys so they understand you guys as people. So where are you guys from? How old are you? Relationship status, and anything else pertinent about you? Job, occupation.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jacob. Share me your relationship status.
All right. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm Jacob. I'm 19. I am single. Yep. And we're from Atlanta. So.
Atlanta ATL. All right.
Yep.
How about your education, Jacob?
I just graduated high school last year, so I'm in my first year of college at Seminole State. So it's going pretty good so far, but it's school, so it's not like super fun.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm Kevin Monahan. I'm Jacob's father, and so let's see. Been married to my wife Megan for 23 years, and I am currently a pastor at Journey Christian Church here in the greater Orlando area. And been doing ministry stuff for a long time, and so also am a online professor for Liberty University and teach an experiential learning, internships, residencies, as well as next gen ministry and helping people kind of find their purpose and direction and all of that. And so I have went to Stanford University for undergrad, Wake Forest for graduate school, and that's where Jacob was actually born in North Carolina, and then
NC by native.
Yeah, in Raleigh, and then I've got a doctorate, and so it's kind of a little bit about who I am. I got 2 other kids. Jacob's the oldest of them all. We've got Aiden, who is 17, and then Olivia, who's 14, and there's no way I'm telling you my wife's age. So that's kind of where we're at. So,
man's
that's a little
brilliant.
bit. That's a little bit about me, man. So yeah.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and get into. So on this segment, I wanted to get you guys' opinion because my audience hasn't had a chance to delve into this conversation. I want to talk to you guys about dating in the world of 2023 and the culture that exists around it. So I'll start you guys off with this question. What are y'all's thoughts on marriage in 2023?
You want to start us off, married man?
I'll jump into that. Well, I mean, I think that marriage can be complicated for sure, even defining that in the society that we're in right now. But I mean, I would say as a follower of Christ, I think my first one is it's a covenant between man and a woman and God. And so in all of that, I think that's the crux of it. But I also think there's legal repercussions of that. There's financial and if you get blessed to be a parent, there's parental parameters around that too that make sense and all of that. And so I think that marriage, can be defined a lot of different ways. Look at it. I mean, I can understand that we've got friends and family that see that differently. Some people see marriage as just a legal contract, and some people just say, I don't even need that legal contract. Like, I'm married in my own eyes, my own heart. And I think a lot of it goes back to where your focus is and where your kind of foundation is, where you're going to get that from. So
I think that definitely hit a number of the different outlooks that people have on marriage. Jacob, when you hear about marriage, what do you think of it yourself?
I mean, yeah, like you said, it's like it's just like a special, like, kind of like spiritual and like contract of stuff like that between a man and a woman. I think that's kind of like pretty controversial to say these days, especially because it's like it's kind of hard for people to come with like a straight definition for marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's gotten to a point where it's kind of meant different things to a bunch of different people. Like, is it just like saying you love each other? Or is it just like an actual thing that like matters? Because I mean, you say in your vows, like, you'll love each other to your death or until you part or whatever. And a lot of people, when they hear that, they think, okay, well, I'm going to part from this person in like 6 months or 2 years or whatever. It's like divorce rates are so high. I think it's like,
it's like a solid 55%.
I was gonna say
60%.
it's like some like 50% of marriages end in divorce.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. And a lot of those aren't even like small relationships or like short term, like within 3 years of getting married. Some of these are like 30-year long that have gone on for like I couldn't imagine my dad getting divorced or things like that. I mean, being married for 23 years or like just being married for so long, and then that stuff kind of like breaks away just because whatever happens. Like, you got to make sure you're doing it for a right reason. Like, you don't want to like go in too fast, but you got to define it correctly.
There's a lot of splinterage that happens. I mean, a lot of people think of, that as far as the breakup part of it, they just think of this is the end of our relationship. I was done with it. I was over it. And then I think the consideration for all of the different people affected by it sometimes is like secondhand. But I know people who are, father-in-laws or mother-in-laws, grandparents, and these people, like, years and years later are just destroyed. Like, this was my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law. So you both of you have alluded to the fact that marriage is different now compared to how it was understood before. What do you guys see as a big thing that is the difference of marriage now compared to how it was in the past?
Wow, that's a good question. You got anything to say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a tough one. I think it's a couple of things, Devahntau. Is I think first of all is just we're in a world of ever-changing definitions. And so people are defining not just what's right or what's wrong or what's good or what's bad or what makes you happy doesn't, can make me upset. And how do we balance that? So, I mean, to me, I think what is it's come back to this sense of kind of subjective morality and the fact that I can define my own value of anything. And there's as many people are, as there's that many definitions. And so I think it also goes back to, like I had said a little earlier, is like authority of, hey, where is your authority? So as a believer, and as a pastor, my authority isn't just what I think or what I come up with or I can logically comprehend or document in my life. It comes from my view of Scripture and what God has said about the quality and the value and the importance of marriage. As well as other things. Of course, I learn other ways to be a better father, a better husband, a better man from things, but they come down from the foundation of Scripture. And I can't divide myself out of culture, like being what I've been born into. I didn't really have a choice of being born into a white Irish Catholic family, like that's in the United States, so there's obviously cultural influences. I speak English, so it's like there's cultural influences that I'm not naive enough to think don't influence what I'm doing. But I think at the same time, I think what has shifted is this fact of like, man, I'm going to kind of define my own world. And it doesn't just, it's marriage, it's morality, it's politics. And I think ultimately, a lot of people are going, well, that may change, and I can change it, and however I want to think about it or how I identify that kind of thread of morality in my life is up to me, and I can change it and vary it and adapt it and augment it in any different way that I want. And so when you get to that, that's fine until you interact with another person, right, who has the same viewpoint. And then it ultimately becomes like a conflict. And so if you walked in to marriage, 40, 50 years ago, there was this aspect of, hey, death do us part, I'm going to do that. And there were some people that actually had very miserable marriages and added to that and stuck through it because they thought the only goal is just to be in a marriage. Where I think it's, man, yeah, I'm part of that. And now that I have the guardrails, it's like driving down the highway, right? Like there's guardrails, and guardrails are there. Most of the time we don't even notice them, right? Until you need them, until somebody runs you off the road.
You're
and
like,
then you're like, right. And we're, we're in Florida. There's this fair amount of bad drivers and all of that, but those guardrails are there and you don't notice them, but until you do notice them, they'll stop you. And most of the time it's to stop you from something worse. And so I feel like those guardrails are great, and that's kind of what it is. But man, the call that God's given us through Scripture and through all of that to humble ourselves and to care and to think of others first and to be a servant and to listen before we speak and to be compassionate and kind to one another, I think not transcends that guardrails, but that's how God wanted. He wanted us to have a holy and happy and fun and exciting marriage as well. So now I think marriage comes into it, and you've got a lot of people that are like, why would I get married? I get it. If you're looking at it from some contractual quid pro quo between people, it's like, okay, I get a tax break. What is the benefit of that? And especially if you're in that thing of like, well, this is my money and that's your money and what's ours, and this is my kids and this is your house and that's your problem. There's no shared responsibility of both pleasure and pain. And I think that's kind of what's adapted. But I think it all circles back in this aspects of choosing kind of my own self-reliance, and like, for a lack of a better phrase, like I become my own God. I'm the center of what I want to believe, and I'm setting my own morality, and how I interact is up to me. And any conflict you have is a violation of me, and it can be offensive and hurting and all of that. So I think that's to me the biggest shift of that. I mean, I think of it in society, we say it's like over 50%, and that probably is true. But at the same time, the amount of people that come from divorced homes, my parents are divorced, my wife's family's been divorced. My dad's on his third marriage. My mother-in-law has been married 3 times and divorced. The amount of impact in that is so common that it's becoming the norm to do that, to ask even those questions. At least and I'd love, as a man in his late 40s, it's a whole different perspective. But I'm around a lot of teenagers and college students and stuff. Why get married? Like, that's even the question now. Like, what's the purpose of getting married, and do I add value to that? And then the thing is, why stay married? And so those are the 2 questions of like, man, if I can go. I mean, I saw something today, like, it was $199 like sign for $199 divorce, and now you're going through that, and it's like, what's the purpose of staying if I don't like it and I don't want it and I'm not happy this day or that day? And I'm not naive enough to think that that's everybody. I think that's a small amount of people. I think there are a lot of people who genuinely want to work it out and try to work it out. But I do think that we've just made it so easy, and we haven't made it a value anymore, either internal or objectively a value, in the fact that God values marriage. It was Jesus's first miracle was at a wedding. We look at early Genesis of a man and a woman. We call Jesus and the bride of Christ. There's so much in the narrative of the Bible, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, comparing and sharing that and connecting that together. So that's kind of where I'm at. Jacob, what do you think?
Well, that was a lot. I have so many thoughts about it, like so much stuff that you said, and so it's gonna be hard for me to like remember everything you said. But I mean, yeah, like the definition for that stuff has shifted so much, and not even just in marriage, just like anything. Like it used to.
100%, yeah.
Like even for thousands of years, it's been like a certain way. Like people have just like live in an exact way. Like even when America was started, like people had their roles, people did their exact same thing. Usually it was different for men and women. They had their exact things they had to do. And while it's okay to change, I think if you just allow everybody to change, you kind of get into that aspect of, well, change is okay, which it can be, but it's like then you don't really know what works and what doesn't. And so you're trying so much stuff and you end up changing just to be different and to not want to stay the same. And so you create your own definitions, like you said, of just of certain things, especially marriage. Like people just create their own definitions for that, man. Like you said, like a $200 divorce. Are you kidding me?
That's
like,
wild, dude.
Yeah, it's like
that's just the sticker number. That's just the headline number. There's a lot in the back.
Sale. Yeah, there's a big sale.
Yeah.
The aspect of is that we're selling that in the same way that we would sell a car wash, for $20, or like some get HBO Max for $20 or $25 for it's so frequent and done so prevalently in our culture that it cheapens into that. So yeah.
So here's a question I have for both of you. Okay. Who, if there was a pie, and of course this the aim isn't to ultimately land here, but if we were to look at it just right now, who would you guys say is more at fault for the state of where marriage is today?
Like, are you saying between like a man and a woman?
Yes.
Or you're like, okay.
Or if there are third-party factors involved,
yeah,
that as well.
That's a good question.
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Well, I guess if we're thinking about like between a man and a woman, who do we think is like not has more of the problems, but kind of more of the fault lands on them for things you do? I'd probably say the man's probably more the I don't like to use that term, but victim for some of that stuff. I know I've heard a lot of stories like recently, like I don't know if we'll go into this later, but cheating is like a whole like crazy thing that goes on now. Like it's it just runs rampant for no reason.
You could probably find more couples where there's cheating involved than not.
Yeah, than loyalty.
By a large majority in today's dating culture.
Yeah, it's really crazy. But what I was gonna say is like it's kind of gotten to a thing, and I've heard stories of men where their women or their woman, not women, singular, their woman will cheat on them, and the man still gets blamed of, oh, you didn't give me enough like satisfaction in bed, or you didn't provide me with enough stuff, like I don't have enough jewelry from you, or I don't have enough food, or you didn't give me enough money, or things like that. It's like the man is definitely there to provide, and I know that's what my dad wants to be for my mom. I know that's what I want to be for my future wife. I want to be the person that provides. And I mean, hey, if I'm the stay-at-home dad and I'm at work just chilling with the kids, that's fine. But at the same time, I want to be the one providing and like doing all that stuff for them. And so it's definitely can be like a lot of stress kind of like put on you of things like, if I kind of do this wrong, then I can be to blame, even if it's not like entirely my fault. Like it definitely should be a 50-50 thing, but it can sometimes like sway a little bit, maybe. So.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good, Jacob. I think it's a great question too. Here's the thing: we're all to blame. There's enough irresponsibility to go around, and I think that. It's an interesting question, but it is also complicated because I think we live in a society today that if we can find who the villain is and villainize somebody, we don't have to change anything about ourselves. So if I'm a man and I say, well, it's women, they're cheating and they're doing this and they're selfish or whatever, if I'm saying, well, I can say that about every man to do that. So on a macro level, so when I think government has weakened the view of marriage in the fact that in some ways it's not as valuable as it once was. There's political aspects of that, the entertainment value of like I can be married today and then be divorced tomorrow. We've seen celebrities and politicians and pastors and leaders and teachers and all of that give very poor examples. So I think everybody's to blame on the macro level. I think the institutions of that, I think we don't spend enough time on it of like, what it means to be married. People aren't taught. You can get married really as long as you're sober and you pay the fine or the tax. Sorry, same kind of thing. And all of that, you can legally, as long as you're not mentally incompetent to a really bad layer, and you meet the criteria. I mean, some states it's a little bit. You have to have a marriage license for 7 days. Some places it's 7 minutes. And
oh, wow.
Well, I mean that's Vegas. People still can get married and all of that stuff. And I mean it's smaller, but the prerequisite it's the same thing for me of like thinking about having a parent. Like all you have to do is be able to have sex and fertilize an egg, and you can become a parent. There's no test for that and no training for that. And I think we should do that. That's on the macro level. I think we're on the micro level. I can tell you this, who's caused the most amount of problem in my own marriage is myself. Because it's my own selfishness. It's my own pride. And I remember years ago trying to figure all that stuff out. And God gave me this line that I've used in weddings when I get the pleasure and opportunity to do them, is that really, if you want a strong marriage, and I think this goes to any relationship, you want a strong dating relationship, you want a strong friendship, anything. But a strong marriage happens when I fight me for us. See, and that's the problem. Like in that is I want us without fighting me, and then I put my wife, and it's easy. I can victimize my wife because then I don't have to change. You know what I'm saying? If that person's at fault, then I'm a victim, or I'm someone who doesn't have to change. And does that happen? Of course it does. And there's been people that have been part of really bad abuses, and especially when you start bringing elements of physicality in that, and emotional and sexual abuse and all this stuff, for sure. But what I'm saying is in the day-to-day, it's I have to fight myself because I think I do. I take this out of Romans 7 where it says what I want to do, I don't do. What I don't want to do, I keep on doing. Who can save me from this wretched body of death? And we all know that. If you're really honest with yourself and you take a deep breath and you sit at the end of your bed every day and you talk, say, God, show me something. Even if you don't believe in God, if you sit there and you talk about that, you're saying like, I cause myself the most problems. Who's gotten me the most? I've been the most lazy. I've done things out of pride, lust, arrogance, all of this, fear. anxiety, all of those things. And that's usually just a Tuesday, like in those kind of things that you can dive into that. But I think I go into that, and I know on the micro level, it's like, man, I got to fight against my own selfishness. I got to make sure I get enough sleep, that I get enough to eat, that I start my day off with kindness and compassion and gratitude and thankfulness of all the blessings and the things that I have. If I come in and I start my day with entitlement, then I've got this aspect of I'm the victim, that's the villain. And if that person did it right, then I would be happy. And I just, and now I think the harder part with dating in generations now too is the fact that we can start turning that on ourselves. Like people aren't really kind to themselves, and they start seeing like guilt and shame and hurt, and no one would love me, and I'd rather be in a bad relationship than I would than be alone. And
so a question that comes from there, I think that's super. Now I think that is super important to recognize that difference in there. The question becomes, what is the difference between someone that's in a bad relationship versus someone who is just in a bad moment, but they hyper emphasize that moment to be the entirety of their relationship? When is that person looking at it realistically and for what it is, versus when is that person just blowing it up to something bigger?
Well, I mean, I think we can do that, Devahntau, every once in a while to like emotionally exhale. Like we all have to have those moments where, I mean, it's the reason like a toddler throws a tantrum, and the same reason a 50-year-old can throw a tantrum. Like in that moment, you just need to release that. But just because I'm frustrated, I'm angry in that moment, and maybe I say things I don't want to say or do things, and I'm maybe angry at that person, most of the time, if you give it a little space, and you give it a little time, and you sit back, you realize I was kind of acting like an idiot. And maybe I blew that out of proportion. And maybe that there's things that I could change, or maybe it looks as an opportunity to change. And so I think that, a lot of that happens is we are also in a society that I feel like, as much as most people feel like they're independent or autonomous, they feel like they have to justify to the world around them. So there's this aspect of like, let me take whatever bad thing happened and blew it out of proportion. I mean, if you looked at people that divorce, it's happened so rampantly now. Like I know several couples right now that, like, if you looked at it objectively, one was maybe physical abusive or emotionally abusive or distant or detached or whatever. But if you ask both of them when they're done, the other person was the worst. Like, oh, it's their fault. We got divorced not because of what I did, but because of what they did. So we like to blame, and we like to put that on other people. And I think part of that is we want to justify, because most people don't like to think, well, I'm a bad person, or there's things I could. I mean, that's why I think this goes right with the Gospels. I fight me for us, is that us is objectively and subjectively more important than my own happiness. And if I go in daily to submit to what God has for me, and submit and care for my wife, and put my wife's needs above myself, I'm not saying I do it all the time. Jacob can tell you that, but I'm just saying, like, I think that if I start that way, I can come back. And if she starts that way, it's two people that are fighting for us more than me, or as Megan says it, like, let's fighting for we over me, in that aspect of like, how do we have a strong marriage? Because that's what we want. We want a strong relationship in that. So yeah, it's good. It's a good question. Jake? Anything else you want to add?
No, I'm good. I don't think I can top that.
Definitely. I think that the idea of fighting for we over me is that may go right back to the general base of the whole issue of, like, the fact that people are now going into that direction where they're just defining what we is objectively, like, because nowadays, we can look anything from me and the person to me and the person and maybe another person we're trying to involve, or me and the person, but here's my ex in the background kind of kicking around. And so as far as boundaries go in there, and being able to figure out where we is and what outside influences that, what are y'all's thoughts on boundaries, and what is a boundary that exists that is okay, that is healthy for the relationship, and when does a boundary step into being controlling? Because I think that now a lot of people would see certain things that a person would say. For example, a couple that's together, let's say one person wants to go to the club, the other person isn't feeling too happy about that. They say, "You're going to go to the club? I don't want you to go to the club." Now, if the woman to the man, he hears that, he says, "You're just being naggy. Get off of me. I'm a man. I do what I want to do. I've been working all this time. I deserve some time off with the boys." From the man to the woman, he hears that and he goes, "What are you trying to do? Who are you going to the club for? Who are you dressing up for? What's the purpose of all of this that you're doing right now? I'm here at home right here. Your kids are here. Why are you trying to go out to the club?" So when is there a difference between, like I said, boundary versus controlling?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And I was just about to bring up that fact of like the club thing. I've heard that a lot more recently. Either just like scrolling on Instagram, whatever. I see so many videos of like people debating stuff like that. And no, it definitely makes a lot of sense. I think the first thing is like defining your boundaries early is like always super important, and like what makes you comfortable and uncomfortable. Because if you just start like kind of going at it like normally as you normally would, you kind of end up crossing lines without even knowing it. Like if you're going to clubs and stuff like that. So
real quick, because I think you said something that you said defining boundaries earlier. And so like going into that, what do you think that actually looks like, practicality played out like in a conversation? How do you think people go about defining boundaries earlier?
Oh yeah, I like I said, I have no dating experience, so I don't know. I don't know exactly, but I'm saying how I would do it is, I would literally just do it like as early as you can. Like if you're gonna start dating someone, set those boundaries. In fact, I'll explain in just a second. But set boundaries, and then if the other person doesn't like your boundaries, like a crazy amount, then you don't have to be in a relationship with them. But if you're doing it, if you've already dated for months and then you set boundaries and then it just gets uncomfortable, it's like you don't want to end something that's been going on for a while. But I think the best way to set boundaries with someone is to literally just be straight up. Just be like, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with you doing da 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 da. I'm fine with you doing this." Like, kind of taking out those things that you would consider bad and replacing them with better habits or better activities. Like instead of going to the club, how about you go do Zumba or something, or go work out or something.
Zumba's
like
a great exercise, I hear too.
Yeah, just find something else that's I guess more fun or more relieving of stress, rather than going to a place where you're going to get hit on and where people are going to approach you and where you're going to be maybe intoxicated, stuff like that. Like just kind of put yourself in better situations. And like I said, just address it right out of the gate. Just be like, "Hey, I'm not comfortable with you going to the club every week, or you can go on a girls' night out every month, but be back at a certain time," or stuff like that. It's like defining it like that pretty early is good. I think it can definitely get hard when it comes to like controlling wise, because I think a lot of people see I'm not allowed to do what I normally do, and so that's being controlling. I think it's just kind of how would I define it? I didn't want to use the word respect, but there's a certain word I'm looking for, of just kind of everybody likes their activities or the things they do a certain way, and people don't like change. But you can't just stay the same way for people. The point of relationship is to change with that person and become better. It's not like to stay the same, keep doing the same activities over and over. It's like, yeah, you can share things with each other and you can definitely do those activities, but you want to be a better person from it, and you don't want to be stuck in habits that you can't break. Like people are supposed to be here for you to help you set boundaries to break those habits. For things like drinking or going to the club or stuff like that, it's like, by the other person placing boundaries on you, it kind of stops you. Like I'm really, when I hear boundaries, I think of like when I was a kid and I had like screen time on my phone and stuff like that. Like, hey, like,
Circle, you remember that?
yeah. So it's like having like, oh, you only get an hour a day for video games or whatever it was. It was like, okay, you can play every day on a school week, but for every grade that you don't have an A in, I take off a day. I remember we used to do that. We used to do that. Not fun, not fun, but I respect it. And now, like looking back, I'm gonna do that with my kids because I completely respect it, and I get the idea of you don't want people to be so enveloped or so into something that it kind of hurts them, even if it's something good. Like another example for me is going to the gym. You don't want someone to be so enveloped with that or so addicted to it, even things that are good, that it kind of just takes control of them and it changes their whole life. Like, it's difficult to, I think, for me to put an exact pinpoint on like certain things because, you know, you think about it and you're like, okay, the gym is healthy for you, and so you should do it more and you should do it as much as you can. But you don't want to obsess over anything, I don't think.
Yeah, having that personality and being able to recognize yourself is super important. You had mentioned something about being able to walk away when a boundary is not respected. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something that everyone, like, we hear that, we think it, we say it to ourselves, but when it comes to being in that relationship for X amount of time, there's always that feeling of comfortability that sort of sets in. Mm-hmm. And so what do you do when you're 6 months in, a year in, 5 years in, and now the boundary has been respected for that time, but now there's a desire for something different or a change to occur or for, you know, stepping outside of the norm? What do you guys think is the answer in that situation where now walking away has a different connotation altogether now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll let you talk in a second. I know he's
go for it.
Yeah, but
That's good.
I mean, I think that's a hard one. That's a good one though. I mean, because I got a lot of friends and stuff like that I've dated, and I'm not gonna name drop anybody, but I mean, I had a recent friend that's
Keeping
like,
the peace.
Yeah, I'm not trying to like start stuff with anybody like, hey, what'd you say about this? What'd you say about me? But no, I've definitely had some friends that they've been in relationships that have been somewhat long. I mean, most of my friends are, excuse me, most of my friends are around my age, so 18 and 19. And so, you know, they haven't been in relationships that have lasted 5 years or anything like that. But even like, even I've had friends that have been in a relationship for a year, and then a boundary they don't like, that they strictly like, what's the word? Put into place, I guess. Boundary
Made clear from day one. We're very honest and upfront about it.
They were like, hey, I don't like this. And it's kind of hard to be like, yo, I don't like this. If you do it, I'm breaking up with you, because I think that can be pretty controlling. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I've had friends that have had relationships that have lasted somewhat long, and when problems like that occur, it's like you said, that kind of like comfortability thing sets in, and you're like, well, they crossed the line, but you know, it was only one time. You know, maybe it's fine. They won't. They promise they won't do it again, and they, you know, they're willing to change because of it. And I think like second chances can always be good, but you know, how many second chances are you gonna give? You know,
Right.
Are you gonna give like 15 second chances? Because that's not a second chance anymore. That's like, that's just like messing up. Well,
That's just like, I no longer care about what
like
your
disrespect.
hope and desire is on this subject.
Yeah, because I mean, the second time, you know, sure, everybody makes a mistake. The third time, it's like, okay, well, I made it clear, so I don't know why you're still doing that. But like after 3, it's like, okay, you're doing this because you think it's funny or something like that. You know, it's like, I don't know why you're doing that, but you know, and you stop or whatever. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really good questions, Jacob. Man, you got some good stuff in there.
Yeah,
So
man. I've been surprised at your answers, man.
Well, I'm not surprised. He's a pretty smart kid. And
So that was the first part, and I'm going to be breaking this up into probably 3 parts. And just in this episode, there was so much in the way of understanding, of being able to look at the situation outright, and being able to just speak to kind of both sides of the issue that come out. And what was exciting for me was to really see the different thoughts that were had, the different ways that self-accountability was preached in here. What do violation of boundaries, what do those consequences look like? What is the proper action to take afterwards? And so some of these stuff, it's just been awesome. And so this is the first part. We're going to have the second part coming out on Wednesday. So make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you have the notification bell on for it. And when Wednesday comes, part 2 will be coming. And then we'll be finishing up with the final part of this on Friday. So hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't miss the next one. And I'll see you guys then.